On snowy Christmas night, the bride whispered nervously, and the gentle Apache calmly guided her. The air was crisp and cold, carrying the unmistakable scent of fresh snow mixed with the faint aroma of pine from the surrounding forest. It was Christmas Eve, a night that was supposed to be filled with joy, laughter, and warmth. But for Emma, standing at the edge of the forest in her wedding dress, the night felt heavy with uncertainty. The snowflakes fell steadily around her, covering the ground in a thick, soft blanket, and each flake seemed to shimmer under the pale light of the moon. Her breath rose in small clouds, and she wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep the chill away, though the cold was nothing compared to the nervousness twisting in her chest. Emma had always imagined a snowy Christmas wedding. Ever since she was a little girl, she had pictured herself walking down the aisle in a world covered in sparkling white, a soft glow surrounding her as she met the eyes of the one she loved most. She had pictured laughter and music, the faces of family and friends lighting up in celebration. But reality often had its own way of rewriting even the most perfect dreams. Tonight the snowstorm had grown worse than anyone had expected. The roads leading to the small chapel where the wedding was supposed to take place were nearly impassable, and the guests who had promised to arrive on time were delayed, their absence leaving an emptiness in the air that pressed on Emma's heart. She could feel her excitement trembling at the edges of her fear, unsure whether the magic of her dream wedding would survive the storm. Her dress, a delicate creation of lace and silk, brushed to snow as she walked slowly along the narrow path that led into the forest. The snow clung to her shoes and the hem of her gown, melting into small puddles that chilled her feet despite the layers of warm fabric beneath. She had spent months planning every detail of this day, and now it felt like everything might fall apart. Emma's mind raced, picturing a wedding canceled, guests stranded, and the image of her dream wedding slipping away like snow melting under the winter sun. She tried to shake off the fear, telling herself that storms passed and that the chapel was only a short distance ahead. But the snow was relentless, and the path was hard to see, each step deeper into the forest making her feel more alone. Just as her hope began to waver, she noticed a figure in the distance, moving steadily through the snow. At first she thought it was a mirage, a trick of the moonlight on the ice crystals in the air. But as the figure came closer, she realized it was a man, tall and calm, moving with a quiet confidence that seemed almost impossible in the midst of such a heavy storm. He was dressed warmly, his coat and boots dusted with snow, and there was something in the way he walked that made Emma feel a spark of relief. His presence was calm, steady, and strangely reassuring in contrast to the chaos surrounding her. The man introduced himself as Thomas, an Apache guide who had lived in the area for many years. He had a reputation for knowing the forest and its hidden paths better than anyone else, and Emma immediately felt a sense of trust in him. There was a gentle authority in his voice, a rhythm that seemed to slow the rapid beating of her heart. He listened patiently as she whispered her worries, her voice trembling in the cold night. She spoke of the storm, the delayed guests, and the fear that her wedding might not happen as she had always dreamed. Thomas did not interrupt or offer empty reassurances. He simply nodded and spoke softly, explaining that he would guide her safely through the forest and ensure she reached her destination. Emma felt a strange mixture of curiosity and relief. She had never met Thomas before, yet his calm demeanor and quiet confidence gave her a sense of security she had not known she needed. He seemed to understand not only the snow-covered paths, but also the storm of emotions inside her. As they began walking together, she noticed how effortlessly he moved through the snow, each step deliberate and sure, as if he could read the rhythm of the forest itself. The snow swirled around them, but Thomas's presence made it feel less like an obstacle and more like a part of the journey they were sharing. As they walked, Emma began to speak more freely. She shared stories of her childhood, memories of Christmas mornings filled with laughter, the traditions her family held dear, and even the small fears that she had carried with her into adulthood. Thomas listened intently, his eyes gentle and attentive, occasionally offering quiet observations or asking thoughtful questions that made Emma think deeper about herself. His calm voice, steady as the ground beneath their feet, seemed to guide not only her through the snow, but also through the tangled emotions in her heart. For the first time that evening, Emma felt a sense of hope that the magic of her dream wedding might not be lost after all. The forest around them was silent except for the crunch of snow beneath their feet and the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. The moonlight filtered through the branches, creating patterns on the snow that danced and shifted as they moved. It was a scene of quiet beauty, both enchanting and intimidating. Emma's nerves began to settle slightly as she focused on the path ahead and the reassuring presence of Thomas beside her. She realized that this was more than just a journey to reach her wedding. It was a moment of learning, of understanding, and of discovering strength within herself that she had never fully recognized. At one point, they paused on a small rise in the forest, overlooking a valley blanketed in snow. The lights from distant homes twinkled like tiny stars, and Emma felt a wave of awe wash over her. The storm continued around them, but in that quiet moment, it felt distant, almost insignificant. Thomas looked at her with a small, understanding smile, and she realized that he had been teaching her something without even saying it outright. Courage, she understood, was not the absence of fear but the willingness to move forward despite it, to trust guidance even when the path was uncertain. Emma felt a growing sense of connection to the forest and to the man who guided her. The snow no longer seemed like a barrier, but a part of the world she was experiencing. Each step a reminder of the delicate balance between fear and trust. She whispered her thanks to Thomas, and he only nodded, his calm demeanor never wavering, as if understanding that her journey was as much about her inner strength as it was about reaching the chapel. The night stretched on, and with every step, Emma felt her confidence grow, a quiet determination forming within her heart. By the time they reached the edge of the forest, the snowstorm had not yet let up, but Emma no longer felt the weight of panic pressing on her chest. She had faced uncertainty, cold, and fear, and she had discovered the power of calm guidance and inner courage. The chapel, still a short walk away, awaited her, and for the first time that evening Emma felt a sense of readiness and hope. She knew that whatever challenges the storm or life might bring, she had the strength to face them, especially with trust, patience, and the quiet support of those who walked beside her. The night was far from over, and the journey ahead would still test her in ways she could not yet imagine. But for this moment, Emma allowed herself to breathe, to appreciate the beauty of the snow, and to feel gratitude for the gentle Apache who had guided her through the first steps of what would be the most memorable night of her life. She had learned that magic often appears not in perfect moments but in the moments when courage, trust, and guidance meet, forming a path through uncertainty toward the light that always waits at the end. The snowstorm had grown heavier, and the world around Emma seemed to vanish beneath the thick white blanket. The forest, which had moments ago appeared magical under the soft glow of the moon, now seemed almost endless, stretching in all directions with no clear path. Every step became harder, the snow deeper than before, and her dress weighed her down as it absorbed the wet snow. Emma's heart pounded, a mixture of exhaustion and anxiety building with each movement. She wondered if she would ever reach the chapel in time, if her wedding would still happen, or if this night which she had imagined for so long would turn into a memory of disappointment and fear. Thomas, the Apache guide, remained calm as ever. Each of his steps seemed deliberate, confident, and sure, as if he were in complete harmony with the forest. He moved through the snow with a rhythm Emma could not yet understand, yet there was something in the steadiness of his movement that reassured her. He glanced back at her occasionally, offering a nod or a small smile that told her he was aware of her struggles, but also that she could trust the path. His presence was like a quiet anchor, holding her steady when her thoughts threatened to overwhelm her. "Don't worry," Thomas said softly, his voice carrying through the wind like a gentle melody. "The snow can be difficult, but it will not stop us. We just need to move carefully, step by step. Keep your mind focused, and your body will follow." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She whispered back, telling him about her fears, how she felt trapped between her dreams of a perfect wedding and the reality of the storm that had taken control of the night. She spoke of the hours of planning, the decorations, the guests, the music, and how she felt that everything might be slipping away. Thomas listened without judgment, not interrupting, not rushing, simply letting her words flow while his steady guidance kept them moving forward. The deeper they went into the forest, the more Emma began to notice small details that had escaped her at first. The snow had settled on tree branches in soft, curving shapes, creating arches over their path that seemed almost otherworldly. Tiny icicles hung from the branches, sparkling like delicate crystals in the dim light. She could hear the distant sound of water flowing beneath the ice in a small creek nearby, a soothing counterpoint to the howling wind. Despite the storm, there was a quiet beauty in the world around her, and slowly, Emma's fear began to shift into a sense of wonder. Thomas paused occasionally to point out safe footing or to take a small detour that would keep them away from hidden dangers beneath the snow. Each time he explained calmly why it was necessary, teaching Emma to read the environment herself. She listened carefully, realizing that he was not only guiding her physically, but also giving her knowledge she could carry with her. The snow, which at first seemed like an enemy, began to feel more like a teacher, and the forest, which had seemed threatening, now felt alive with lessons she could learn if she paid attention. "Every step matters," Thomas said as they navigated a particularly steep incline. "The forest can be tricky, but if you stay aware and patient, it will always show you the right path." Emma nodded again, repeating the words silently to herself. Each step became an exercise in focus, in mindfulness, in trusting not only Thomas but also herself. The anxiety that had gripped her earlier was still there, but it was softened by the rhythm of their progress and by the knowledge that she was not alone. Hours seemed to pass as they moved through the snow-covered forest. The storm showed no sign of relenting, but Emma's confidence grew with each careful step. She began to talk more openly with Thomas, sharing stories of her childhood, her hopes for the future, and the little things that made her heart happy. Thomas responded with quiet observations and gentle guidance, sometimes sharing stories of the forest, the traditions of his people, and the importance of patience and respect for nature. Emma listened intently, feeling a growing sense of connection not only to the forest, but also to the man walking beside her. At one point, the snow became so deep that Emma stumbled, her feet sinking unexpectedly into a hidden drift. She cried out softly, panic rising in her chest, unsure if she could continue. Thomas was immediately at her side, steadying her with a hand on her arm. "It's okay," he said calmly, his eyes meeting hers. "We all stumble. The important thing is to keep moving. I am here with you." The simplicity of his words, the steadiness in his voice, and the quiet confidence in his actions reassured her more than she could explain. She took a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs, and stood upright once more. With Thomas guiding her, she found the strength to continue, one careful step at a time. As they walked, the night grew darker, but Emma began to notice the subtle beauty that darkness could bring. Snowflakes fell slowly in the dim light, each one unique and perfect in its own way. The forest seemed quieter now. The storm's rage softened into a gentle rhythm that allowed her to think and reflect. She realized that the fear she had felt earlier was not just about the storm or the wedding. It was about the uncertainty of life itself, about stepping into unknown territory and trusting that she could handle whatever came her way. Thomas's calm presence continued to guide her through both the forest and her own emotions. There were moments when Emma spoke little, simply following his lead, feeling the rhythm of his steps and the steady pull of his guidance. In these moments, she understood that courage was not about being fearless but about trusting someone, or something, when fear was present. She realized that sometimes the journey itself was more important than the destination, that the lessons learned along the way could shape her more profoundly than any single event. Eventually, they reached a small clearing, where the snow had accumulated in soft, smooth hills. Emma paused, looking around, and felt a wave of gratitude for the journey she was experiencing. The clearing seemed almost like a sanctuary, a moment of calm in the midst of the storm. She whispered to Thomas, thanking him for his patience, his guidance, and the quiet strength that had kept her moving forward. He smiled gently, saying only, "You are stronger than you know. Remember that." The path ahead was still long, and the chapel was not yet in sight, but Emma felt a renewed sense of determination. She knew the storm would test her further, that obstacles would continue to appear, but the fear that had once seemed so overwhelming had been replaced by focus, patience, and trust. Each step, guided by Thomas and strengthened by her own growing confidence, brought her closer to her goal. Not just the physical goal of reaching the chapel, but the personal goal of discovering her own inner strength. As they continued through the snow-covered forest, the night seemed to stretch endlessly, yet Emma no longer felt lost. She had found her rhythm, a combination of careful attention, trust in her guide, and awareness of her surroundings. The storm was still present, but it no longer dominated her thoughts. She could feel the warmth of determination in her chest, a quiet fire that burned alongside her hope. The journey, she realized, was shaping her in ways she had never anticipated, teaching her lessons that went far beyond the wedding or the snow. Thomas led her through winding paths over frozen streams and past ancient trees whose branches seemed to hold centuries of wisdom. He pointed out hidden markers, signs of safe footing, and subtle shifts in the snow that could signal danger. Emma absorbed everything, learning to read the forest in ways she had never thought possible. The experience was exhausting, yet it was also exhilarating, a mix of fear, wonder, and discovery that kept her fully alive in the moment. Finally, after hours of careful movement, Emma felt a shift in the air. The storm, while not completely gone, seemed to soften, the snow falling in gentle flurries. She looked up at Thomas, and for the first time that night she allowed herself to smile fully, a smile that carried both relief and gratitude. She had faced the storm, learned from it, and discovered a strength within herself that she had not known existed. The forest no longer felt like a place of fear, but a world alive with lessons, beauty, and quiet guidance. Emma knew that the night was far from over, and that the journey to the chapel would still test her patience and resolve. But she also knew that she was ready. With Thomas by her side, with the lessons of the snow and forest in her heart, she could face whatever came next. The storm had challenged her, frightened her, and tested her, but it had also taught her courage, trust, and the value of calm guidance. The path ahead was still uncertain, yet for the first time that night, Emma felt prepared to meet it fully, step by careful step, with hope and determination in her heart. The night seemed endless, yet the forest around Emma and Thomas began to reveal a quiet, magical beauty that neither of them had noticed before. Snow had settled on every branch and twig, turning the trees into towering white sculptures, delicate yet strong. Emma's breath formed small clouds in the cold air as she followed Thomas along the narrow, snow-packed path. Each step was deliberate, careful, yet full of purpose, and she was beginning to trust her own instincts more with every movement. The fear that had gripped her heart hours ago had softened, replaced with a mix of awe, gratitude, and a sense of deep anticipation. Thomas walked beside her silently for a while, allowing her to absorb the silence of the forest, the soft hush of snow falling on the ground, and the distant whisper of a frozen creek hidden under the white blanket. It was in this silence that Emma realized the storm, for all its fury, had also created a world of quiet wonder. Every snow-laden branch, every sparkle of ice, and every subtle shadow cast by the moonlight told a story she had never noticed in the chaos of her daily life. She whispered softly to Thomas, pointing out a tree shaped perfectly like an arch, the snow clinging to its branches as though it had been carefully arranged. Thomas simply nodded, his eyes calm and reflective, and in that moment Emma understood that he saw the world differently, attuned to its rhythms, its beauty, and its hidden messages. Hours into their journey, Emma's legs began to ache, her shoes damp despite her careful preparations. The forest floor, though soft with snow, was uneven, and the weight of her dress made each step more challenging than the last. At one point, she stumbled over a hidden tree root covered by the snow, nearly falling forward. Thomas was immediately there, steadying her with a firm, reassuring grip. "It's okay," he said calmly. "We all stumble, but every step teaches us something. Learn from it and move forward." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that comforted her. Emma realized that the journey was teaching her more than she had expected, not just how to move through snow, but how to trust herself, how to trust guidance, and how to find calm in moments of fear. As they continued, Thomas led her to a small clearing in the forest. Here the snow had formed gentle hills and valleys, and the moonlight reflected off the icy surfaces, creating a soft glow that seemed almost magical. Emma paused, letting herself take in the scene. The wind had softened and the snowflakes fell slowly, drifting like tiny feathers from the sky. She realized that this journey through the forest, through the storm, was not just about reaching the chapel. It was about discovering the quiet strength within herself. They sat together for a moment on a fallen log, the snow crunching lightly under their weight. Emma's cheeks were pink from the cold, her breath coming in short, visible puffs. She looked at Thomas and realized how much she had relied on his calm presence. His quiet confidence had given her something she had never known she needed, a sense that even in the midst of chaos, there could be order, guidance, and patience. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft, almost carried away by the wind. Thomas nodded, his expression gentle. "You are stronger than you think. The forest is simply reflecting that strength back to you." The next leg of their journey brought them to a small, frozen stream that cut through the forest like a silver ribbon. The ice was thick enough to hold their weight, but it glistened dangerously under the moonlight. Thomas stepped carefully first, testing the surface, then extended a hand to Emma. She took it without hesitation, her trust in him complete. Each step across the ice required focus and patience, but she found herself enjoying the challenge, the way it made her body and mind work together. She whispered to Thomas about the small fears she had felt before, the fear of losing control, of failing, of disappointing those who loved her, and he listened, nodding with quiet understanding. Hours passed, and Emma began to notice subtle changes in the forest. The storm's edge was beginning to shift, the snow falling more gently, the wind losing some of its bite. The forest no longer felt intimidating. It felt alive, protective, and full of lessons hidden in every detail. Thomas continued to guide her, pointing out small signs in the snow, the tracks of animals, the way the trees bent under the weight of snow, and the safest paths to follow. Emma realized that she was learning to read the forest herself, to anticipate its challenges and find ways to move forward safely. Each lesson, each careful step strengthened her, and she began to feel a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. At one point, Thomas led her to a gentle slope overlooking a frozen lake. The ice reflected the moonlight like a mirror, and the surrounding snow-covered trees added a sense of serene majesty. Emma could see faint lights in the distance, the glow of the village where the chapel awaited. She paused, taking in the beauty of the scene, and felt a wave of emotion that she could hardly contain. The journey had been difficult, exhausting and filled with fear, but it had also been transformative. She had learned patience, courage, and the quiet strength of trusting herself and her guide. Thomas spoke softly as they stood together, looking at the distant lights. "We are close now," he said. "The path ahead is clear, but it will require careful steps. Remember everything you have learned. The forest is not your enemy. It is your teacher." Emma nodded, feeling a sense of readiness she had not felt at the beginning of the night. She understood now that the challenges they faced were not obstacles meant to stop her, but lessons meant to prepare her for what lay ahead. The descent toward the village was slower and more deliberate. Snow had become lighter, falling like delicate feathers, and the path, though still covered, was easier to navigate. Emma found herself noticing details she had missed before: the soft crunch of the snow under her boots, the smell of pine in the air, and the faint glimmer of distant lights guiding her forward. With each step, her confidence grew. She whispered to Thomas about the way she had felt at the start of their journey, the fear and uncertainty, and he nodded, his calm presence reassuring her that she had done well to persevere. As they approached the edge of the forest, Emma could hear distant voices, the faint sound of Christmas music, and the laughter of guests who had gathered at the chapel. Relief washed over her, but it was tinged with a newfound understanding of the journey she had taken. The snowstorm, the forest, the cold, and the uncertainty had all been part of a lesson she would never forget. She realized that the courage she had found within herself, guided by Thomas's calm presence, was more valuable than any perfectly planned wedding or celebratory moment. Emma paused for a final moment in the forest, looking back at the trees that had both challenged and protected her. She whispered a quiet thank you to the night. to the snow, and to the lessons she had learned. Thomas smiled, sensing her reflection, and offered a gentle nod. Together they stepped toward the clearing that led to the village, their pace steady and confident. Emma felt a warmth growing inside her, a combination of relief, pride, and anticipation for the next chapter of her night. The forest gave way to the first glimpses of the village, and the lights of the chapel glowed warmly in the distance. Emma could see figures moving, faint outlines of guests who had arrived despite the storm, waiting with excitement and concern. Her heart leapt, and she realized that the wedding, which had once seemed in danger, was now within reach. The storm had not defeated her, it had strengthened her. She turned to Thomas, who had guided her with quiet patience through the snow, and whispered her gratitude once more. He nodded, his expression calm, almost as if he had known all along that she would make it. As Emma approached the edge of the village, she felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The journey through the forest had been long and difficult, but it had also been full of discovery, reflection, and growth. She had learned to trust herself, to embrace patience, and to find calm even in the midst of uncertainty. The storm, the snow, and the forest had become a teacher, and she carried its lessons in her heart as she moved toward the warmth and light of the chapel. With Thomas beside her, guiding her to the final steps of her journey, Emma felt ready. Ready to face whatever challenges remained, ready to step into her wedding, and ready to embrace the memories and lessons that this snowy Christmas night had gifted her. She knew that the night would be unforgettable, not just for the wedding, but for the courage, trust, and quiet strength that she had discovered within herself along the way. Emma could see the chapel now, glowing warmly in the distance, a beacon of light and hope against the fading snowstorm. The wind had softened, the snow had become lighter, and the path, though still covered in snow, was much easier to navigate. Yet despite the clear view of her destination, Emma felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made her stomach flutter. She had come so far, overcome so many challenges, and yet the thought of stepping into the chapel, of finally reaching the people who had waited for her, filled her with a new kind of fear, the fear of what might happen if she stumbled now, after all she had endured. Thomas walked beside her, steady as ever, his calm presence a soothing contrast to the storm of emotions inside her. "We are almost there," he said gently, his voice carrying over the soft crunch of snow beneath their feet. "Stay focused. One step at a time and we will reach the chapel safely." Emma nodded, gripping the folds of her dress to keep them from getting wet, and took a deep breath. She could feel the warmth of anticipation building inside her, mingled with relief and exhaustion. Every step forward was a triumph, proof that she had faced her fears and continued moving despite them. As they neared the village, Emma noticed movement along the snow-covered streets. Figures appeared rushing toward the chapel, their coats dusted with snow, their faces anxious but hopeful. Guests who had feared she might never arrive were gathering, their voices calling her name, their expressions a mix of concern and excitement. Emma felt a surge of emotion, relief, gratitude, and the warmth of knowing that she was not alone. She whispered a quiet thank you to Thomas, who nodded, his calm gaze encouraging her to stay focused on the final steps of their journey. The last stretch of road was the most challenging. Snow had drifted across the path in high mounds, making each step require more effort than the last. Emma felt her legs burn with fatigue, her feet wet and cold despite her careful preparation. She stumbled once, and Thomas was immediately there to steady her, his hand firm and reassuring.
"It's okay," he said quietly.
"This is the last challenge. You have already come so far. Trust yourself, and we will finish this together." Emma drew a deep breath, feeling the determination she had built throughout the night rise within her. She planted her feet carefully, one step at a time, moving with deliberate focus and renewed energy. As they continued, Emma began to notice the joyful chaos of the chapel preparations. Light shone through the windows, music floated faintly into the night, and voices called out greetings, anxious and happy. It was a reminder that, despite the storm, the world she had imagined for her wedding still existed. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for Thomas, who had guided her safely through the snow and through her own fears. Without his calm presence, without his quiet wisdom, she might have faltered. lost in the forest, were overwhelmed by the storm. She realized that courage was not only about moving forward alone, but also about trusting those who could guide you through uncertainty. Finally, they reached the steps of the chapel. The doors were slightly ajar and the warm glow from inside spilled onto the snow-covered path.
Emma paused, taking a moment to steady herself, to feel the culmination of the journey she had endured.
She could see faces pressed against the windows, smiles filled with relief, laughter, and tears of happiness. Her heart swelled with emotion as she realized that she had not only survived the storm, but had arrived stronger, calmer, and more confident than she had ever been. Thomas gave her a small, understanding nod. "You did it," he said softly. "All that remains is to step inside." Emma smiled, feeling a mixture of triumph and gratitude. She took his hand for a brief moment, acknowledging the guidance and strength he had provided throughout the night. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped inside the chapel, feeling the warmth wrap around her like a soft, comforting blanket. Inside, the scene was everything she had hoped for, and yet more. The chapel was decorated with soft white lights and garlands, the scent of pine and candles filling the air. Guests rose to greet her, their faces glowing with happiness and relief. Music played softly, and the air was alive with joy and celebration. Emma felt her heart swell, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. The storm outside had faded into memory, and inside the chapel, everything felt perfect, warm, welcoming, and full of life. As she walked down the aisle, each step careful but purposeful, Emma felt a deep sense of connection to the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the forest, the snow, the cold, and the long hours of walking through the storm. She thought of the quiet lessons she had learned, the strength she had discovered within herself, and the calm guidance of Thomas who had led her safely through the darkness. The journey had changed her, had prepared her not just for this night but for the challenges she would face in life. Every step down the aisle was a testament to courage, patience, and trust. When she reached the altar, she saw the person she loved most, waiting with open arms and a heart full of love. Relief and happiness collided in a rush of emotion that made her eyes fill with tears. The storm, the forest, and the long journey had led to this moment, making it more meaningful than she could have imagined. She realized that the challenges she had faced had not been obstacles, but blessings, shaping her and preparing her for the life she was about to begin with the one she loved. The ceremony began, and the chapel was filled with the soft music of the choir, the gentle murmur of guests, and the warmth of love and celebration. Emma felt a sense of peace and fulfillment she had never experienced before. The storm outside, the fears she had carried, and the long hours of walking through the snow had all faded into the background. What remained was a profound understanding of courage, trust, and the quiet strength that can guide us through the most difficult challenges. After the ceremony, Emma stepped outside briefly to see the final touch of the snowstorm. The snow had lessened to a gentle fall, covering the world in a soft, sparkling blanket. The forest, which had seemed so intimidating earlier in the night, now appeared peaceful, protective, and beautiful. She thought of Thomas, the gentle Apache who had guided her through the storm, and felt a wave of gratitude. Without him, she might not have reached this moment. His calm presence, quiet wisdom, and unwavering patience had been the light that guided her through darkness. Emma realized that the journey had been about more than just reaching the chapel or having a perfect wedding. It had been about discovering the strength within herself, learning to trust guidance, and understanding that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward, despite it. The storm had tested her in ways she could not have imagined, but it had also given her the most important lesson of all, that inner strength, combined with the support of those who care for us, can carry us through even the most difficult challenges. As the night wore on, Emma celebrated with her family, friends, and loved ones. Laughter, music, and cheer filled the chapel, but she carried the memory of the forest, the snow, and the quiet guidance of Thomas in her heart. It was a memory of resilience, courage, and the power of trust, lessons she knew would stay with her for the rest of her life. She understood now that the storm, the forest, and the long walk had been as important as the ceremony itself, shaping her into a person who could face life's challenges with patience, determination, and calm courage. By the end of the night, Emma stepped outside once more, gazing at the snow-covered world around her. The lights from the chapel reflected on the snow, creating a magical scene that seemed to shine just for her. She could see footprints in the snow marking the journey she had taken, the steps of courage and the guidance she had received. Each print told a story, and each step had brought her closer not only to the chapel but also to herself. The gentle snow continued to fall, and Emma felt a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. She had faced the storm, navigated the forest, and arrived at the place she had dreamed of for so long. Yet more importantly, she had discovered a strength within herself, a calm courage, and a trust in the guidance of others that would stay with her forever. The snowy Christmas night, which had begun with fear and uncertainty, had transformed into a night of triumph, growth, and unforgettable memories. As she looked back at the path she had walked, Emma understood that the journey itself had been the gift. It had taught her lessons that no celebration, decoration, or music could ever provide. She whispered a quiet thank you to Thomas, to the forest, to the snow, and to the night itself. The chapel, the guests, and the ceremony were wonderful, but the true magic of the night had been the journey, the courage she had discovered, and the guidance that had shown her the way. Emma knew that she would never forget this night, not just for the wedding, but for the lessons of strength, trust, and patience that had shaped her forever. She had faced the storm and found herself, and that realization filled her heart with a warmth that no winter cold could ever take away. The Christmas night had become more than a celebration. It had become a story of courage, resilience, and the quiet, gentle guidance that can light the way even through the darkest storms. The warmth of the chapel wrapped around Emma like a soft, comforting blanket. The storm outside had softened into a gentle, peaceful snowfall, turning the world into a sparkling wonderland. Inside, laughter and music filled the air, but Emma found herself stepping back for a quiet moment, her mind still alive with the events of the night. The journey through the forest, guided by Thomas, had left a lasting imprint on her heart. It had been a night of fear, challenge, and uncertainty, but also of courage, trust, and quiet strength. She could still feel the rhythm of the snow under her feet, the cold biting at her cheeks, and the sense of awe she had experienced as she followed the calm guidance of the gentle Apache. Her loved ones were celebrating, offering hugs, smiles, and congratulations. Yet Emma felt a quiet reverence for the journey she had taken alone with Thomas through the forest. Each step of that path had taught her something invaluable. She had discovered patience, learned to trust guidance, and found a courage within herself that she had never known existed. These lessons were now a part of her, flowing through her thoughts and emotions as clearly as the soft music and laughter surrounding her. She realized that this Christmas night had given her a gift far beyond any decorations, presents, or celebration. The gift of discovering who she truly was in the face of uncertainty. As the ceremony wound down, Emma stepped outside briefly to see the snow falling gently around the chapel. The lights reflected on the snow, creating a magical scene that made her heart swell with gratitude. She thought of Thomas, the gentle Apache who had guided her through the storm. Without his calm presence and quiet wisdom, she might never have reached this point. She whispered his name softly in thanks, imagining him somewhere nearby, continuing his quiet journey through the forest. The thought of him reminded her that sometimes the heroes of our lives are those who appear quietly, guiding us when we need it most, without seeking recognition or reward. Emma's family and friends gathered around her outside, their faces glowing with joy and warmth despite the cold. Children laughed as they made small snowmen. Couples held hands, and the soft glow of lanterns added a magical touch to the winter scene. Emma watched them for a moment, her heart full of gratitude, knowing that she had arrived not only physically but emotionally stronger than she had ever been. The storm, the forest, and the long hours of walking through the snow had all contributed to this moment of triumph. She realized that the night had been about more than a wedding. It had been about resilience, patience, and the discovery of inner strength. She thought back to the moments in the forest, the hidden creeks, the snow-laden trees, and the soft whisper of the wind. Each detail had been part of a lesson, teaching her about focus, trust, and the courage to continue even when the path seemed impossible. The snowy forest had been a mirror for her own emotions, reflecting fear, doubt and uncertainty, but also showing her the strength, determination, and calm that lay within her. Thomas's guidance had been the key, helping her navigate both the physical challenges of the storm and the emotional storms within her heart. She realized that life, like the snowy forest, often presents obstacles that seem insurmountable. But with patience, trust, and guidance, every challenge can become a lesson and a source of growth. The guests called Emma back inside, and she stepped through the chapel doors once more, greeted by the warmth, music, and celebration. She joined her partner, who held her hand with a gentle squeeze, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had endured together and everything she had faced alone. The ceremony had concluded, but the night was far from over. Laughter, stories, and quiet conversations filled the chapel, yet Emma's mind lingered on the journey she had taken through the forest. She realized that the lessons of that journey would stay with her forever. Later, as she sat with her loved one sharing stories and laughter, Emma found herself telling pieces of the journey through the forest, the storm, and the quiet guidance of Thomas. She spoke of the snow-covered paths, the frozen streams, and the moments of fear that had tested her courage. She spoke of the beauty she had discovered in the forest, the quiet magic of snowflakes falling under the moonlight, and the lessons she had learned about patience, trust, and inner strength. Her friends and family listened with rapt attention, some with wide-eyed wonder, others with quiet admiration. Emma realized that her story was more than a tale of a snowy night. It was a story of growth, resilience, and the power of guidance and trust. As the evening drew on, Emma stepped outside once more. The snow had settled into a soft blanket, the forest around the chapel quiet and peaceful. She walked slowly, savoring the silence and the beauty of the world around her. Each step was a reminder of the journey she had taken, the lessons she had learned, and the courage she had discovered within herself. She whispered quietly to the forest, thanking it for the challenges and the beauty it had offered, and for the gentle guidance of Thomas, who had been her teacher and protector without asking for recognition. Emma realized that the true gift of the night was not the wedding, the music, or the celebration. It was the journey itself. It was the discovery of courage, the lessons of patience and trust, and the quiet strength that comes from facing fear and uncertainty with determination. She understood now that life would present storms, obstacles, and challenges, but the lessons of this night would stay with her, guiding her through every difficult path she might encounter. The memory of Thomas and the snowy forest would always remind her that even in the darkest moments, calm, guidance, trust, and inner strength could lead her to safety, warmth, and light. As the guests gathered their belongings and the night began to wind down, Emma felt a deep sense of contentment. The storm outside had faded, leaving the world covered in a soft, glittering blanket of snow. The chapel glowed warmly, the music and laughter lingering in the air, and Emma felt a sense of completion, knowing that she had faced the challenges of the night and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident. She realized that the journey through the forest had been a metaphor for life itself, a reminder that challenges are not meant to defeat us but to teach us, to reveal our inner strength, and to prepare us for the moments of joy and fulfillment that await. Later that night, Emma stood at the edge of the chapel steps, gazing at the snowy world around her. The forest loomed in the distance, quiet and serene, a reminder of the long journey she had taken. She could still feel the memory of Thomas's calm presence, the rhythm of his steps, and the lessons he had imparted. She smiled, knowing that she carried those lessons within her heart, ready to guide her through every challenge life might bring. The gentle snow continued to fall, a soft reminder that even in the coldest and most difficult times, beauty, guidance, and courage could be found. Emma returned inside, joining her partner and their loved ones. The chapel was quieting now, the music softening, and the guests beginning to prepare to leave. She sat for a moment in reflection, feeling the warmth of the celebration, the love surrounding her, and the sense of accomplishment she had earned. The journey through the storm and forest had been exhausting, but it had been transformative. She had discovered patience, courage, trust, and the quiet power of guidance. These lessons were more valuable than any gift or decoration, more meaningful than any celebration or ceremony. As the night drew to a close, Emma and her partner walked hand in hand outside once more, the soft snow crunching beneath their feet. The forest in the distance shimmered in the moonlight, quiet and protective. Emma whispered a quiet thank you, not only for the guidance and lessons she had received, but also for the courage she had discovered within herself. She realized that life, like the snowy forest, would present obstacles and challenges, but with patience, trust, and inner strength, she could face anything. Finally, as they prepared to leave the chapel, Emma took a last glance at the snowy night, the forest, and the lights of the village. She knew that the memories of this Christmas night would stay with her forever. Not just the wedding, the celebration, or the snow, but the journey itself, the quiet guidance of Thomas, and the courage she had found within herself. She understood that true strength comes not from avoiding fear, but from moving forward despite it, with patience, trust, and hope lighting the way. Emma stepped into the carriage waiting to take them home, feeling a deep sense of peace, fulfillment, and gratitude. The storm had passed, the forest had revealed its lessons, and she had arrived at the destination not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually stronger than before. The snowy Christmas night had given her a story she would tell for the rest of her life. A story of courage, guidance, trust, and the quiet magic that appears when we face our fears and embrace the journey. As the carriage moved slowly through the snow-covered streets, Emma rested her head against her partner's shoulder, thinking of the night's journey and the lesson she would carry forever. The world outside was calm, sparkling under the gentle snowfall, and she knew that life, no matter how challenging, could always be met with courage, patience, and the quiet guidance of those who care. The Christmas night had been unforgettable, not because it was perfect, but because it had been real, transformative, and filled with lessons that would last a lifetime. Emma closed her eyes, smiling, feeling warmth in her heart that no winter chill could ever take away. She had faced the storm, trusted the guidance of a gentle soul, and discovered the courage within herself. The snowy Christmas night had ended, but its magic, lessons, and memories would remain with her forever.